Hello everybody, I am Brian P. Easton, the author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series, and you've just walked into the Werewolf Bar.
The truth comes out as the fire burns low, comes to light as only embers glow. The whiskey talks, the west wind moans in the night. The dead falls gathered and the branches are cut. The kindling crackles and the smoke curls up. The small sticks catch, then the bigger stuff will burn. Chinook dies down as the dark descends and the pines burn. The ash is cleansed, the message smolders, is lost but finally sent. Connie sisters never seen the cougar so bold. They're coming in the yard and they're stealing young colts. They drag them in the...
Happy New Year to you wherever you find yourself in the world, and welcome to our 6th season of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. It sure doesn't feel like it's been 5 years since we started doing this show. I remember in 2019 when I decided to step out from behind the curtain, so to speak, and to bring my book series to the YouTube viewing public. I wasn't very good at it. I stumbled and stuttered all over myself, but hopefully we've gotten a little bit better. Those of you who've been with us since the first will remember that for the good part of the first year, I tried to do an episode every week, which proved just incompatible with my schedule. Since then, we've been bringing you one episode per month, for better or worse. And we've seen a few changes over the last 5 years. And like I said, hopefully we've gotten better as we've gone along. But one of the things that we haven't changed is, of course, our creature of the night. It wouldn't be Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter without the whiskey. So before we start our show, we always have a sampling of a bottle of the creature. Tonight we are featuring Two Brothers small batch bourbon whiskey. My father-in-law gave this to me over the Christmas holiday. And so let's crack it open and see what manner of thing we have here. Do you, Rich? That's pretty smooth. It has a real nice flavor and mouthfeel to it too. It's a non-chill filtered. So it's got a bit of what you might think of as a cloudiness to it, or what they call a whiskey haze. It's just a cosmetic effect to the pour. But lots of whiskey drinkers like their whiskey to be crystal clear. They want to be able to read a newspaper through it, which is where the chill process comes in. That'll do that for you. But this is non-chilled, filtered, and I like it. I think the little cloudy effect is nice, and I mean, you can't go wrong. This is a good bourbon. If you're a regular viewer of the show, then you know that we've been talking about the Legends of the Werewolf Hunter, Book 2, since last summer when we first announced it. Since then, our writing team has been busy putting together a second anthology in the Sylvesterverse, as we call it. And as of the first of this month, all of our stories have been submitted and are currently in the editing process. Fingers crossed and knock on wood, we hope to have that for you this time next month and let you know that the book is live. That's our goal, and Miles and I have our work cut out for us this next month to see that that happens. But I think, barring anything unforeseen, I think we have a decent chance of making that date. So here for what may be, and hopefully is, the last time, a trailer. Some of the authors you can expect to see in the new anthology. You'll also see stories by Miles Booth himself, W.J. Pittman, and our own Amanda Rogers. The important thing to remember about these anthologies is they all connect in some way with either the original trilogy or the Winter Fox Journal's prequel books. Well, this being the beginning of a new year, I wanted to do something a little bit different than our business as usual. And so I've asked our regular presenters to tell us a little bit more about themselves rather than their field of expertise, how they were first introduced to the book series, and generally just a little bit more about their personal lives than we usually get into here at the Werewolf Bar. Such is the case with Amanda Asks.
Morning, Brian. Happy New Year. I hope the New Year's treating you pretty well. I've been down with a cold for the last couple of weeks. And of course now it is really cold out in Missouri. But I understand new year, new way to do things. We're going to ask today about you, not about your book specifically. So I want to know how much of your personal life parallels your books. Did you meet your wife in similar circumstance? Does she have Native American ancestry? Tell us a little bit about how you and she met. I'm very curious. Frankly, when it comes to me, I have no secrets. Everything's out there. It's open. But when I came to your books, my oldest was in middle school. My youngest was not even a twinkle. And my middle son, my middle baby, he was just born. And we had to sit in the parking lot and wait for my older daughter to get out of school, and he just was inconsolable. So I downloaded a Kindle, and your book was the first one that came up recommended, and I would read it out loud to him while we waited for her to get out of school, and he kind of soothed down. And it was a really interesting book. I ended up buying it twice more on Kindle because my phone screwed up, and eventually bought a paper copy. And here we are. I ask you all the questions about the books. You have dozens and dozens of answers, and I'm looking forward to reading more of your books in the future. Again, Happy New Year to you and your family, and I hope everything is going well for you this year, and I hope to see your next book very soon.
Thanks, Amanda. I find it funny that reading my book to a crying baby helped them settle them down. I'm glad it worked out that way for you, though, having been there myself. So how much of my own experience is in my books? I think that's something that every author has to answer for, generally sooner than later. And in the early days of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter, I discussed a lot about that, how life experiences and different influences factored in to my series. A lot of my own adventures take place outdoors, in the wilderness, in the woods, where I've spent a lot of time working, and I've worked with wild animals, mostly predators, and I've always enjoyed weaponry and firearms, as well as the occult, which I began researching for myself back in 1984. And you can see how these interests reflect not only in the books, but on this very show, with Tools of the Trade and Doc Talk Shop. But the subject of how I met my wife is something I don't think I've been asked before. But before we can talk about that, I think I need to preface the subject by saying that I was an avowed bachelor for much of my adult life. I was what some people refer to as a serial monogamist, meaning I enjoyed the company of many ladies over the years, but only one at a time. I had zero interest in being married. I loved what most bachelors, I guess, love about being single, the freedom to do just exactly what I wanted to. And I did. I'd pack a bag and I headed south for the Smokies and trapped invasive species for the Park Service. I headed out west to the Southern Pacific line and worked in Colorado and Utah up in the Rockies. And I just made a point to have those experiences. Not everyone has the opportunity to. I met my wife through a mutual friend of ours sometime late 80s, maybe early 90s, and we were casual friends. She lived about 3 hours north of me, so I didn't see her very often, but we always got along well, and we always had interesting conversations when we did. However, as well as we two got along, I think it was safe to say there was no real mutual attraction between us. In fact, she's told me since that she wouldn't have wished me on her worst enemy. No doubt because of this reputation I developed as a kind of a love 'em and leave 'em kind of guy, to which I have to plead guilty, although in my defense, it wasn't deliberate, okay? I was looking. I was trying to find the right girl, even though I didn't even realize it at the time. And for my part, she was just way too bossy for me to find attractive, though easy on the eyes she was and still is. But in 1997, I had just come out of what I considered to be a pretty serious relationship. But for the first time in my life, I came out on the wrong end of it. It broke my heart, and so I suppose I received my comeuppance. So one day I'm talking to this mutual friend who mentions her by name, and out of the blue, this suggestion that I should call her. And I remember laughing at the thought. But after I thought about it a while, the idea became intriguing, and I decided it couldn't hurt, and so I called her up. This after not seeing or speaking to her in a few years, because there had been some falling out between her and this mutual friend. So we end up on the phone for something like 3 hours. And before the call is over, we've got plans to meet up. She's going to come down for a visit. She came down, we saw a movie together, had dinner, and I was just amazed to find the dynamic between us was just as good as it ever was. Easygoing, down to earth, but the chemistry had considerably changed between us. And so we started dating, and we were off to the races. But I'd become an incredibly cautious person in regard to relationships and in my own estimation of what that meant. And as far as I was concerned, there was no greater judge between two people than time. And so I was committed to let as much of that pass as was prudent to help determine whether or not this was the time to pull the trigger. I was 35 years old in 2001, and that was the year when we married. It was late October in a nice outdoor wedding. My father, the minister, presided over the proceedings, and that's the dime tour of it anyway. So thanks for that question, Amanda. And next month, we'll be back to questions about the book series, which are probably considerably more interesting. So if you have a question about that, be sure to send it to the email address you saw at the end of Amanda's segment. Moving on now, Dr. T. Broussard, who I asked to give us a bit of his history. One does not attain the proficiency in the occult arts and sciences as Doc has by just reading a few books. There's always a story there. So it is with Dr. T. And this is the January installment of Doc Talk Shop.
Hello and welcome to Doc Talk Shop as part of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. And of course, Doc. And this evening, morning, depending on whenever you're looking at this, I am going to have to do something somewhat difficult. I am going to have to talk about myself. Not my favorite topic, but it's a story that fits in with everything else we've done here. So, begin with this. I discovered the work of Brian Peace, when I was researching one of my own books, and a term in one of my books turned out to be also the title of one of his books. And being that his book was about werewolves, I had to check it out. That's a favorite topic of mine. going back to childhood, and I was amazed at how closely his books align with some of the things that I knew about werewolves from my work. So, given the fact that it's a childhood fascination of mine, some might say obsession, if you ever talk to my family, this is a good moment to talk about my earliest years. Yeah, I was born in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, May in the 70s, and I was born in a hospital called Lady Lake, which is somewhat ironic considering the fact that my father's given name is Arthur. So, and so I was very premature, born with a mild birth defects, and was raised in, between time in Gonzales, Louisiana and Prattville, Louisiana, both very small towns. Eventually, ended up in Baton Rouge, and as a kid, I heard Rougarou stories from my godmother. And on top of that, heard lots about different religious things from both sides of my family. I often describe my family or families as Catholic because we went to church on major holidays and times when I was a kid, and we also were aware of different folk traditions, although neither of my families would call it that. Um, in the environment, you grew up where I grew up, and you sort of picked up lots of different influences. And I was, in 1987, after watching my then favorite show, Werewolf, starring Chuck Connors, I performed what was my first sort of occult ritual, and it involved shapeshifting. And later, that led me to have an experience in which I wrote a book that ended up being almost 800 pages. And from that experience, I began to study occult, and spent many years trying to work all that out. While I was doing that, from the age of 6, or rather in tandem with that, from the age of 6, I was studying martial arts, studying martial arts history, and all kinds of things like that. Went to, I would call, typical schools for the places I lived in. The grades weren't all that good, to be honest with you, because I was bored out of my mind. I eventually left home and traveled a lot, a great deal, and I've spent time in places like Los Angeles, New York, um, the Southwest United States, parts of South America. This is my life and career. I am what I would call somewhat devoted, very devoted to my family in my way. I have a half sister, I have 3 half brothers. For reasons to protect their innocence, I won't give their names, but they are what I call good, upstanding people. My father's family, the Broussard side of the family, are primarily musicians. I am directly related to the man known as the father or the king of swamp pop, Van Broussard. My aunt is Grace Broussard, who was actually on American Bandstand with Dick Clark at one point as part of Dale and Grace, singing duo back in the 50s. In the course of my life, I've had the pleasure of meeting some rock stars, if you want to call it that. I have attempted music myself, but less about that the better. Then writing books was 12, I would say, and finally got the nerve to publish them in the early thousands. And one of my first books was a martial art book called Ninja Magic. And martial arts is probably the only thing I've studied longer than magic. And I've had the pleasure, and they've had the misfortune of having been the student of several great teachers, my primary sensei being the somewhat infamous Ashita Kim, I believe one of the greatest martial artists of the 20th century, and still one of the greatest sages of the present era of life. As for work, beside my books, I teach class as a martial artist at least 3 times a week. I also do consulting work of various kinds. Basically, from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, I tend to be up at night, tend to sleep days, blame it on my bloodline, if you will. And yes, that's partly a pun, partly not. It's a lot to do with my time doing, musicians work vampire hours, so I got used to doing so. In my life, I've been very blessed, for want of a better term, to be pretty much always self-employed, although I have done odd jobs. As part of this expose of myself, I'm going to bring you into my office or my workspace. And you can see here, this is the door to what we euphemistically call my lair. And you can see various wards, which are protections on the door. These things keep some things out, and they keep some things in. And if you look closely and you do a little research online, you might be able to figure out what some of those things are on both sides. So, this is the back of that door. And again, you can see the God's Eye and Dreamcatcher, which I acquired in my travels. Here you can see another door in my workspace, paying an homage to one of my esoteric teachers, a man I would often refer to as Padre. He taught me various aspects of Brujeria that were incorporated into my 5 books on what I call Lugaria, a term I coined myself. Here we have, coming into my workspace, we have a bookcase that mainly deals with sorcery from North and South America. We have the area in which I do that kind of work off to the side there. Here we have a front view of this. We have offerings to various entities attached to the wall, and beneath the shrine itself, we have the shrine. in which you can see the preponderance of wolfish imagery, and wolves to me are very important on a spiritual, personal basis, and so sorcery is really the art of personal power. So if you're dealing with personal power, you're gonna have to deal with what's important to you to have that power. So again, that points back to my association with werewolfery and Brian's work. On here beneath the shrine, you can see again offerings of tobacco products, among other things. We have soul bottles here. We also have icons of different entities I've worked with. A soul bottle is a bottle that binds the souls of people involved and can be used for protection or influence. Here we have another shrine along with the central altar of my workspace. Here you can see a close up of the shrine to my patron. This shows the vessel through which I communicate with my patron, along with other icons that deal with the masculine and feminine aspects of my patron, along with one of the emblems associated with my patron. We have the seals above the shrine of my patron. These deal again with, you have the four guardians of the four directions, four basic elements. You also have the steel that represents the magical current of my patron. And we have some more books. You'll see there's a lot of books in my workspace. This is primarily a collection of books on the black arts, demonology, and the chromatic arts. Here we have a collection of actual grimoires or spell books, including some of my own from around the world and from different traditions. One of which is actually in my own hand. Here we have my poster of one Aleister Crowley, a great inspiration for me and for many others in my field of study. We also have some objects from my travels, including a rosary made by one of my occult students. Here we have a writing desk in the area devoted to recognizing my ancestors and my heritage and associations. You'll note the silver bullet in this shot. This is the central altar of my workspace. You'll see various tools. You have the mace that serves as staff. You have the chalice, obviously, a dagger. You also have a bowl, and hidden away, you have my actual grimoire, which would be a spell book. You also have a ring, talisman, and fez that serve as the vestments I wear when I'm doing certain kinds of work. Or skulls that hold up the pillars of my personal paradigm, you could say. And a replica of the Hand of Glory. Here we have an example of what's known as an Nkisi, a vessel of spirits. This cauldron is filled with bones and other organic matter, including pomegranates. And this is a way of honoring the dead in general, as well as my ancestors and several spirits that I work with. You see some objects from South America, including a vase devoted to Copele and a machete, which I don't think I need to explain. You'll also note in the background a small brace that I used to have to wear as a young pup because of my slight disability I was born with. Here we have my small homage to a very great organization that I am the leader of at present. It's an organization I joined and eventually became head of, and it deals with people that share my particular set of beliefs and practices. Here we have another shot of my writing desk. You can see an urn that concerns my love for a particular wrestler. I'm a long-term fan. And also see my personal replica of the Bloodstone from the Subspecies films, which only recently became available to the public. This is actually the only one of, well, no, I'm sorry, this is the fourth of 300 that was made. So to me, it's a very personal item. And you also can see certain fiction books that I keep in what is essentially my office area. Kind of goes with the theme of the rest of my workspace. Here we have a visual example of what's known as a soul ladder. You can see my spirit represented at the bottom, and as the image rises up, you can see it can go from a conglomerate creature through the various trials represented by the symbols to singular animal forms before it reaches the divine, if you will. This represents the struggle of the spirit to liberate itself from all its limitations by transforming its physical components to be light, not to escape the flesh, but to transform it to be an extension of the spirit. Here we have another shrine. This to ancestral spirits and more vessels for plants and so forth that I'm working on. You can see alcohol here that is offered to particular spirits. Spirits is somewhat ironic, but nonetheless true. Here we have various staves and canes and other such objects. One of which I'm very privileged to own. This was the wolf-headed cane, the last one of its kind, used by Jonathan Frid in his portrayal of Barnes Collins. He used this for a public event in which he was honored. So, and now it's mine. And as we end this somewhat speedy tour of my workspace, I hope it's been somewhat enlightening. I've studied the occult and martial arts together for about, well, most of my life, at least 35 years at this point. And I've recently accomplished a particular milestone in that. As to the occult, I've published 12 books, and I have 13 that belong to my system. The 13th would be the one that started off for me, and no one is ever going to see that. That's my book. So, May, the new year. Bless you all. And before I go, I'm going to ask Brian a question. And this is a bit of theory for the books. How would the lineage deal with a woven shifter not a part of that lineage? Every preternatural lineage likes to think of itself as the only one, or the truest one, or the best one. So, how would our pack from the books deal with the revelation of another lineage, one that is not connected to innate evil, as you describe? Would they be rivals? Would they attempt to make them allies? Things like that. And on that note, I'll say good hunting and mind the moon.
Thank you, Doc, for sharing your background with us and giving us a little insight into what you do and how you learned how to do it. Now, Dr. T's question is one I've had to contend with for some time, and I've tried to define the lineage and have it work with folklore and social conventions, as well as other types of werewolfery that one finds throughout the world. And here's what I've come to concerning werewolves that are not based on my concept of the lineage, which is the collective name for werewolves in my literary universe. It is where they come from, it is their identity, it's how they propagate, and it's the rules that they have to live by. One of the things that's nice about creating one's own literary mythology is you get to determine what's real and what's not within your own paradigm. And so the lineage is what defines werewolves in my mythology. But that's not to say that I have dismissed every other tradition of shape-changing or werewolfery, history and tradition that don't fit into my fictionalized scheme of things. Quite the contrary. I have tried to incorporate a lot of these things into my idea of the lineage, even if they don't seem to fit as nicely as the rest. For example, I've included the tradition of skinwalking, as is found among the Dene people, commonly referred to as Navajo, and I included that in the Winter Fox journals. And that character, that skinwalker, will be seen again. Now, skinwalkers and the witch culture from which they come are not literary inventions, and especially not by me. But in order to take the world at face value and have it make sense inside a fictional universe of my design, I make it a little bit fictional in and of itself by including it as part of the lineage, even if it's through sorcery rather than the process of being bitten or being whelped. The same thing is true with the old French traditions of the belt of wolfskin, the wolf strap, and the unguent that was said to be used to transform from man to beast. Again, this is part of history and folklore that I wanted to fold into my storytelling, not dismiss it or replace it. And so when we see in the second Winter Fox journals the wolf strap and the salve as products of the lineage without the usual implementations, that's birthright and birthmark for those of you keeping score, being marked or being born into the lineage. The same kind of thing could be said about my treatment of Peter Stubb in Heart of Scars, where I take this historical figure, Peter Stubb, a legendary werewolf in real life, and fictionalized him enough to fit within the boundaries of my universe, but to explain it in keeping with artistic license, if that makes sense. In fact, I pretty much made the lineage not only the source of existence for werewolves of different stripes. But if you've read the latest Winter Fox book, vampires as well. So coming back to Doc's question, how would the lineage receive werewolves that did not come from that source? Well, from where I'm coming from, we'd be talking about a crossover event of some kind. The lineage meets the wolves from True Blood or Twilight or any other universe where werewolves exist, but the lineage, as I've conceived of it, does not. So along those lines, if the legacies and the houses and the clades of Wolven from the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series were to meet up with werewolves from a completely different universe, I think there would be a fight. My werewolves are not peaceable creatures by any means, nor by any stretch of the imagination, and they don't tolerate one another very well, let alone some other species of werewolf altogether that's beyond their capacity to understand because it's not within their universe. If we humans hate what we don't understand and try to either convert or destroy it, I don't expect any less from Wolven. But that being said, I think I've left plenty of room for variations on the theme. Whether it's rabies or a jug of consecrated wine, there are factors which can considerably alter the status quo when it comes to Wolven. To say nothing of the mixing of bloodlines, which we've seen can create physically pitiful specimens, such as the Omega Wolf, Khun Bish, and absolute nightmares like the Darkest Wolven. I've really tried to accommodate all the differences in as many werewolf traditions as I can, so that each one of them can be traced back on a line to the original source without compromising the original lore too much. Thanks, Doc. I hope that answers your question, and I thank you for asking it. And that's going to do it for the 6th season kickoff. I want to thank you for coming by tonight to share some time with us, and I hope your 2024 is off to a good start. As we close things down here at the Werewolf Bar, let me remind you that you can find us on the web at werewolfhunter.com, and you can send me an email at brian@werewolfhunter.com. I hope you'll like and subscribe on your way out, and until next month, happy hunting and mind the moon.